Today's guest on The Best Boss Ever is Mike Mooney. He's a bit of an impresario, having run his own consulting shop for the last 7 years and really knocking it out of the park in many ways. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But as the name implies, this is about his best boss ever. And he started his career on the agency side back with the Cotter Group, Cotter, by the way, which was acquired by SFX, which then sold to Clear Channel, which then became Live Nation. So that progression we'll hear a little bit about from Mike. And then he migrates to the brand side. Nextel Sprint, many might recall that Nextel at their outset became the naming rights sponsor for NASCAR series, which at the time was the largest sports marketing sponsorship in the industry. And Mike spent, the better part of 3 years there. He then migrated to a very formidable agency called the Marketing Arm. Anybody who's been in the sports marketing, entertainment, brand business knows all about the Marketing Arm. He spent 6+ years there. So he got his real chops in the agency world from a brand strategy perspective, and then got recruited by Fenway Roush Racing. And anybody in motorsports knows that that's still a venerable group in motor racing. I spent the better part of 5 years there and then left to start his own firm. So without me letting any more rabbits out of the hat, I'm going to welcome Mike to the show. Mike, so glad you're willing to spend some time with us on The Best Boss Ever.
Carl, listen, I am so glad to be here. And when I saw the invitation, we had the chance to talk, I could not wait to join you. So thank you for having me on, my friend.
My pleasure. Listen, let's start at the beginning where we always do, because along the way, I know one, maybe even more than one, leader, boss, manager influenced you significantly, and those attributes stayed with you. So let's sort of start at the beginning. How did you get to Cotter? Because you were there at a really fun, interesting time, given all of the mergers and acquisitions that followed.
Yeah, that was a wild time. I mean, you think about sports, and in particular motorsports in the 90s, the early 90s. We often refer to it now, I think, looking back from our rocking chairs as like the golden age for a lot of us who were coming into the sport then, of just the pure enjoyment of the business and how it was growing and evolving. Agencies, like you were talking about, they're starting to be looked at by other agencies. This idea of, Cotter Group starting as a public relations firm, but they were one of the first that diversified into show cars and experiential marketing and hospitality and licensing and brand management, driver representation. Tom Cotter, who was the founder of the organization, just had this amazing vision and always seemed to be like 2 steps ahead of where the industry was going. So it was a great time to be there for sure. But if I could, there's like a story before that, though, if I could share.
Please do. This is all about stories.
Well, it's funny because people say, "Oh, wow, you started in motorsports. How did that happen? That must have been amazing." And I've had very grateful for the career that I've had. But actually, my first job out of college, I was an assistant manager in the footwear department of a Super Kmart in Hickory, North Carolina. Now listen, this was back when the Super Kmarts were this radical idea of having the soft goods and clothes on one side, and then they'd have a shopping grocery area on the other. This is 1993, okay? So you think about that whole concept. Well, I was there thinking, what have I done with my life? I mean, I'm just unboxing shoes all day. And I had this manager at the time. I really call him like a guardian angel, to be honest with you. And it breaks my heart, Carl, because I can see his face. I just cannot remember his name. And I wish I could remember that just to thank him. But he had asked me one day, he's like, "Hey, Mike, we've got to redo the entire department over the next 3 weeks at night, and I have no overtime in the budget for you. Would you help me?" And at the time, I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm happy to do that. I've got no place else to go but my apartment in this dark area of town. So sure, I'll help you out." So we do this and we get to know each other pretty well. And he asked me towards the end, he said, "Mike, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Man, I'm stuck. I got a lease. I got a car. I got bills I got to pay. I can't go anywhere." And he said, "No, what are you doing here? You need to be somewhere else." And I said, "Well, I appreciate that, but I don't know where I'm going." I mean, honestly, I was 22 years old. I had no idea. And I said, I'm stuck. And he goes, "I guess so." Well, at the end of the work we did together, Carl, he says, "Hey, I found your overtime." I said, "Oh, I appreciate that." And he hands me an envelope, but there's no check in there. There's no cash. It's just a letter, and I'm reading the letter, and on top it says "letter of transfer." And I look at him, I go, "Are you transferring me?" He said, "No." He said, "I want you to go find another job. I want you to get the heck out of here. And when you do, I want you to use this letter of transfer to go to your landlord and get out of your lease and roll, just go." And that was actually when I interviewed and got the job at Cotter Group. When I started there, that was my start in motorsports. And in fact, I still have, just for the fun of it, because you shouldn't forget where you come from, right? I have
Exactly.
my name tag, right? There it is, assistant, making those blue light special announcements for the footwear department.
Kmart shoppers.
So yeah, man, I just wanted to share that because sometimes the best bosses are those that show up as guardian angels and think are present, right? And he heard what was going on. He saw something. He's like, "I'm going to help. I want to help," and he did.
Well, that is one of the more admirable attributes of leadership, is to see something in someone that perhaps they don't see in themselves, and then give you the swift kick in the pants that you obviously needed at the time to move on with a mechanism to do so. And the support and encouragement. I mean, here's a guy who believed in you clearly. And that cannot be understated in the world of business, is to have a leader that believes in you. So I love that story. Great way to start this show.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So where do you want to go then from
Well,
Cotter?
I mean, listen, so nobody knows who Cotter is,
Yeah.
except you and,
Yeah.
and now me, because you shared that with me. But the
So
migration of Tom Cotter, who you mentioned, SFX to Clear
yeah.
Channel to what became Live Nation, which had a motorsports division, and
Right.
then in 2007, 2008, sold that group to Feld Entertainment, which had its, history in the circus, and
Mhm.
now still today runs what was the Live Nation Motorsports Group. So obviously you got a taste of motorsports, and you went from this mashup, right? From
And it was.
yeah.
It was. I mean, it was the Wild West, Carl. I mean, literally, I remember sitting in a meeting that was full of Clear Channel acquisitions. These were just, I mean, we literally were bought by SFX and their sports group. And it was great. I mean, we were one of the maybe first or maybe second acquisitions of a motorsports agency, which was huge at the time when this happened because there was probably like one other group that was acquired by IMG. And then SFX comes in, they acquire us. We're going to be the motorsports arm for their work, which is fantastic. And there was a clear, definitive plan of how we were going to operate together as agencies from the marketing standpoint, integrating all of our assets, the whole idea, right? So they pull together the surround sound, value of the agency instead of these silos that we had been in. Oh, you're just a PR group, or you're just a marketing group, right? And that was the beauty of Tom's vision. He saw all of that and brought that to life prior to the acquisition. But yet, I want to say it was maybe 3 months or so. It wasn't long, Carl, after SFX acquired us. They were acquired by Clear Channel. And suddenly they went from, "Hey, we're here to help you. Everything's going to be great," to, "We got to figure out what this means for us." And leads me to that meeting where we're having a luncheon with all of these other Clear Channel, acquired companies. And we're all looking at each other like, what are we supposed to do? And there was no mandate other than figure out how to work together and figure out how to make this, these businesses come to life. So it was an interesting time for sure, you
Yeah,
know?
no, it was, because there was this moment in time where Clear Channel was buying everything that wasn't nailed down.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
on the one hand, so if you were Tom Carter, or you were an owner or a founder, and your company was acquired, that was good because you put a big stash of money in your bank account. On the other hand, while clearly there was an appetite for scale, and I watched this from afar back then, there wasn't really a strategy around bolting all these pieces together. And, so you get a bizarro, right? I mean, we grew up with
Man.
Superman comic books. You just get this patchwork quilt, which doesn't really homogenize or leverage synergies or any of that.
So,
And
so
they lived that for a few years until, they figured out that the two core aspects other than the media side of the business at Clear Channel, which is still a thing. It was music and it was motorsports. And then, the rest is history. Live Nation was formed. Mike Rapino came in, spun off the motorsports group to Feld Entertainment, and now is a vertical entity in. But those early days obviously sparked something in you around motorsports because you end up on the brand side at Nextel Sprint. So I want to hear that story because
yeah.
I'm going to say, in their own way, they were throwing money around because they were kind of a no-name brand at the time, Nextel. They make this huge splash in the marketplace by spending a boatload of money in NASCAR and then get acquired by Sprint.
Yeah. So the Nextel, it was very interesting because you're right. I mean, I had up until that 2003 year, 10 years, where I was living in motorsports and NASCAR. I was doing work for Mercedes-Benz and IndyCar, as well as ATP Tour Tennis and PGA Tour Golf. We're doing a lot of different work for some amazing brands. And I remember distinctly, our youngest child, she was 4 days old. We just got her home from the hospital, and I'm laying on the couch, and I get this call. I'm looking at my Nokia phone, right, and it says Reston, Virginia, and I'm like, who the heck is in Reston, Virginia? And I pick up, and it was the chief communications officer for Nextel. Said, hey, we are going to be, as you may have heard, the series sponsor. We're going to be replacing Winston, and wanted to know if you'd be interested in coming on board running the marketing communications for the sponsorship for us on the brand side. And I was at that time, public relations and the communications side, the crisis management, a lot of that I worked through the early part of my career. And for me, this was like an unbelievable opportunity to not only work on the brand side. I really wanted to understand what that was going to be like, but also be able to help set strategy for this significant, not only for a brand as a technology brand. If you think about it, Winston had been the series sponsor. It was the Winston Cup for 33 years, Carl. Everything was Winston red. Even the data even said, even if you weren't a smoker and you were a NASCAR fan, you loved Winston. You loved them for what they did for the sport, right? So here we are, this really like nameless tech brand that people said just stroked a mega check. Coming into this sport was quite an undertaking. And it was one that, was also a changing time in our business, if you think about it, where the idea of always being accessible started to really become a reality within the business because you're working for a telecom company. Oh, and by the way, what else did Nextel have that made them so popular with the construction group that they were trying to bring to the consumer side? But the direct connect. So now we can just direct connect each other whenever we needed to. So yeah, it was an incredible experience to be able to help work with a great team of people and develop a strategy for how we wanted to introduce a brand to 75 million fans, and help them understand how we were here to make their experience with NASCAR better. We wanted our technology to bring them closer to the sport they love, to help them get closer to the drivers and be part of those teams that they followed week in and week out. So it was also my first introduction, to be honest with you, of corporate politics, man.
Alive and well.
And what that looks like. What we're all not on the same thing. Okay, great. So it was great. Now I had a phenomenal boss there, Elizabeth Brooks, who was the woman who recruited me over, and she was a saving grace because if you think about it, and you understand this from the work you've done in sports and putting events together and what it takes to build. So I was hired late October of 2003. This sponsorship was going live of February 24 in Daytona. So you think about the time frame you had, not only in the rebranding, we had a team working on that, rebranding through the entire sport, all the tracks, all the teams, the photo shoots,
Wow.
cars, going down the line all the way to the media, right? What are we saying? Who are we putting out front? Who's going to be telling the story? We've got to get to know the entire ecosystem, from the media partners to the sanctioning body, the tracks, the drivers, the owners, the sponsors. So It was an incredibly fast-paced, to say the least, experience of putting together a program in short order with amazingly talented people that were just incredibly passionate. But Elizabeth was amazing at helping me then navigate and work the corporate side of things while we were focused on building the brand and the sport.
So who to copy on an email or who not to, the sort of
Yeah, it was.
inner work, I mean, obviously she impressed you. And what are a couple of the takeaways
Yeah.
that, you learned from her?
Here's what it was. She was a connector at heart. So she recognized that the value of the sponsorship, not just externally and what it could do for revenue for the company, because we had all the data points that said, look, the average revenue per user of a NASCAR fan versus your general, consumer was like 3x. So we knew from a business standpoint it was going to make sense. But she recognized, because she's a communicator and knows, she's like, we have internal stakeholders too. So, Mike, I want you to meet the people in security. I want you to meet the people in governments and government affairs. I want you to meet the people. And she ran me through at least 13 different divisions, within Nextel that allowed us to bridge gaps to help them and their business through the sports. The idea of recognizing that she knew I was very zeroed in on a very specific task and a very time-oriented task. She had the vision and the perspective to step back and say, and I want to help you build bridges to these other valuable relationships that we're going to need as a business. So
Right.
that was huge. That was huge.
That is huge. That's, listen, you're sitting in a group that arguably, in retrospect, maybe overspent for the rights that they purchased, but at a time where their brand needed that kind of platform and oomph, if you will, to
We
start
were
to resonate.
definitely we were boxing out above our weight. There's no question.
Right. Right. So with Elizabeth's guidance, you obviously start to, you know, complete a recipe of understanding and necessity in a large corporate brand environment like that with let's just be real, pretty significant budgets. So while everybody at the company, I'm sure, was mindful of spend, it was, well, if we want to spend it, we're going to spend it because we have it.
Mhm.
Then you go to the agency side of the business at the marketing arm where pretty much as an agency you're chasing budgets. You're
Without a doubt.
chasing
Yes.
clients. You're right. So you
Yep.
don't have the luxury of, well, if we need to spend it, we will. There's no such luxury there. It's like we get another client or we stall,
That's
right?
exactly right. That's
So I'm
exactly right.
keen to hear about the marketing arm side because they're a venerable agency even today. They've stood the test of time.
Yeah, they have, without a doubt, without a doubt. All from the vision of Ray Clark all the way to his other leaders down the line of Dan Belmont and Andrew Robinson, Trina Ruffino, who's now heading the ship as well. It's interesting because you nailed it. There was a realization that agencies recommend and brands decide, right? I mean that's the old adage. And I at that point communications was what my world was within sports and motorsports, and I felt like having what I had done at Nextel was a very pinnacle-esque type of position that I love. But man, I was honestly, I was tired of getting handed like the assets after the marketing team cut a deal. And I'm like, well, what about this? And what about that? And we need these things. And I'm like, figure it out, because they just wanted to get the deal done. So I'm like, I want to know what they're doing on that side. Right. And so when I joined the marketing arm, that was really my first opportunity to understand the brand strategy, to understand the marketing components of putting together, like connecting those dots of assets into a strategic plan that could deliver the return that the brand was looking for, or at least enough that we could get in there and pitch it with credibility and confidence to say, hey, here's what we could bring to the table. So I really believe that having the communications background and how to position and tell stories was a great benefit to then helping the marketing side of how do we pitch this, how do we position it, how do we best prepare ourselves for these types of opportunities. So that was and again the marketing arm was one of those groups that I won't say was similar to what we had in Clear Channel, but it was made up of four, five, six different divisions at different times, whether it was
Right.
entertainment division, talent division, we had a mobile division, we had experiential, motorsports, general sports, I mean, music, so there was a lot under that umbrella that made us very competitive at a time when brands were looking for a significant partner, and the creativity had to be there. It was all about the story at this point in time.
Totally get it. Which is, listen, a couple of former guests have been agency veterans. And I asked one gent who came out of motorsports, still is in motorsports, probably know him, Steve Loletta. He lives near you.
Yeah, I know him very well.
Right. So I asked Steve, I go, what, if, listen, you got a kid coming out of college. What are you going to tell her if she wants to get in the world of sports, regardless of what sport? What are you going to tell her? Where should she start? And he 100% without a hesitation said agency. Start at an agency, because the breadth and depth and the multiplicity of learnings that you're going to get from brand to brand, from property to property within an agency environment is just going to give you a baseline of knowledge and understanding that will allow you to take the next logical step, whatever that might be.
Yes.
So you sort of, you, Mike Mooney, move your way down the path. And by the way, for everybody listening, Sprint buys Nextel back then, and then T-Mobile buys Sprint. And that's why nobody on the planet now hardly even remembers what Sprint and Nextel were, because it's been T-Mobile for a long time. Not so different from the whole SFX, Clear Channel, Cotter progression.
That's right.
All the way along. So the one of the things, elements, if you will, or planks in the globality of sport is the rights holder, right?
Yes.
Whether it's a league or a team or a touring artist. So you make the shift from, a super strong agency in the marketing arm to an equally strong rights holder in Fenway Roush Racing. Still, listen, there aren't that many people in the world of sport, let alone where you came from, that really understand how Fenway and Roush go together.
Yeah.
So that's a question I've always had, and I've known several people who came out of that group, so I'm going to make you answer that question. So talk to us about the rights holder and, what you learned perhaps differently being on the rights holder side than the agency or brand side.
I absolutely will answer that. I would like to jump back to Loletta's comment about the agency side, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. The other thing I would add, I would say yes and to the breadth and the experience, but there's also, you learn a level of service and servant leadership and being someone who wants to serve and solve problems. I just think that's incredibly important for people, whether you're on the brand side or the agency side. I just didn't see it so much on the brand side. It was more on the agency side, where your mindset is always to serve and to deliver and to find solutions in creative, unique, and enjoyable ways. And I think that's the other part of the agency world that I think is super important. So
that's well said. That's well said.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that. So yeah, so that was another one that was out of the blue, where I got a call from the executive team at Roush Fenway, and they asked to have coffee. And the first question they said is, "Hey, so where are the teams missing it today?" Right now, granted, this is 2012, right? Sponsorships are still very competitive. Yet the way that teams were going about vying for those sponsorship dollars was still very archaic and traditional. It was still selling the paint on the car. You're still sending out proposals with, hey, here's your logo on the hood and we're going to get you this exposure. And they failed to realize, and this is what the marketing arm helped me see so crystal clear, is that the teams aren't competing just with other teams. They're competing with the Olympics. They're competing with the Grammys. They're competing with every other platform in sports and entertainment where a brand can put their money to then connect with consumers. So they asked me that question, and I was really clear, saying, well, hey, you're missing it with the approach, you're missing with how you're positioning yourself, you're missing it with the story. I kind of went down the line, thinking in my mind, Carl, thinking that we can bring them on as a client of ours. And I even said, hey, and we can do all of this for you. And then there was this sort of silence at the table. And they said, well, we were kind of thinking you may come over here and do it for us. Now, I didn't see that coming, but it did pique my interest because it was, again, I'm a very curious person, man. I'm always wanting to learn and experience things. And I said, wow, this would be very cool. I can take my agency experience, my brand experience, and now bring that to a team property, a rights holder, and really pull that together. So that was an exciting time where we built a mini agency within the team to help service our clients. We did a lot of unique and different things that made us successful on the marketing side of the sport. Now, you asked me a question about why John Henry and Jack. My understanding of how the story goes, because you know how stories are. There are a lot of different ones out there, but my
Depending on
understanding.
who's telling the story.
Right, right. John Henry was very interested in motorsports, that he did approach Jack to buy into the sport. My understanding is that Jack, I don't want to say turned him down, but essentially was like, I don't think you want to get involved in this. It doesn't make sense for your business or what you're doing. But as it was relayed and told to me that John Henry wanted to diversify, he was really interested in the sport, felt that there could be some synergies with the Fenway Sports Group and what was going on there. So he invested in and went in on it, and I'll tell you, it was unique positioning. Again, one of the early sort of models where we had these multi-sport assets
Right.
from a property that we could offer our partners. So we could say, hey, yeah, come on, you be part of our team, and yet we can also integrate you within the Fenway system, their media system, and so it was interesting. But again, man, like you've probably seen, and this was sort of the demise away with the whole Clear Channel SFX experiment, it was great. There were a lot of things that are great in theory, but in practical application, sometimes you end up confusing the brands more than you're providing solutions, right? So I'm not saying that was the deal with Fenway, but we had to be really mindful of how we were positioning solutions.
Well, I think that's right. In fact, I know that's right. The reality of what looks good on the back of the napkin does have its challenges in execution. The math equation on how to acquire or merge or collaborate and throw assets into a bucket and, true it up and march on, that's the easy part. The hard part is the cultures, the disparate asset base. In many instances, in larger associations like this, there's a geographic dispersion that has to be dealt with. So, these things, as I say, a lot of times look great on paper, really hard to do and execute at a level that the underlying principles have been used to operating at,
Yes.
right? So that's a huge challenge in business, and it doesn't really matter whether it's a multi-billion-dollar, merge together or acquisition or a much smaller. So you still have those A, cultural, B, systemic, C, practical issues that need to be solved for alignment to optimize, the now combined asset base.
And that's spot on. The experience that a lot of the folks had with the Clear Channel piece was, this is how it played out. I remember sitting at a table with the local radio station, with the local amphitheater, with our buddy Ken Hudgens up with Feld now as well, right? He was big on the motorsports side out of Chicago. We all these great ideas for solutions, but when it came to the bottom line of what everyone needed to meet their financials, nobody was able to budge. No one can get direction from the higher ups to say, yeah, you can take a haircut in order to make this happen, to find these synergies. So it was the practical application from a financial standpoint was what was really hurting that. So yeah, I believe that in theory those are great, and leaders need to then work further downstream to say, here's how we're going to make this make financial sense and incent each other, to
Right.
make sure that this comes to life.
Right. Yeah, that's so we're for all intents and purposes saying the same thing. Before we get to what you're doing now, because
Yes,
that's really super interesting to me, without naming names or organizations, is there a standout on what I'll call a not so great boss or leader, where you observed either behavior or decision making or other that you went, whoa, that's out of bounds. That's something I'm taking off the table right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. And the person's name is,
Don't.
no, 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 I would not do that. But absolutely, I think as much as we learn from, the best bosses out there, we can also learn a ton from the worst that we experience. And I think sometimes we learn more from them. This particular individual, what I experienced was somebody who in one-to-one meetings would agree with you on direction and give you their support unwavering, than to send you out into the field and to literally cut your legs out from under you while you're trying to get the job done by going around to other people to just sort of put that proverbial knife in your back, and you're wondering what is that back here that I can't get my hands on. So yeah, it was very disconcerting. I lived with that for several years, and more importantly, this is a whole other episode and a whole other session, my friend. I'm sure you can relate to it, but the psychological and the emotional impact of that type of behavior, and not even to mention the toxicity it creates in a culture, but what it does to the individual, this can't be understated. And I'm not trying to make this about a touchy-feely thing. I'm just saying that, leaders being cognizant of the impact they have through their actions and their follow through and their word and what that means. It's powerful.
It is. It is, and thank you for that, because those are the kinds of things that as one goes through one's career path, inevitably he or she is going to run into that. And understanding what it is, how to watch out for it, and determine if it's cemented in the culture or whether it's an aberrational moment in time. Those things all sort of come into play. And as one assesses leadership, career path, trajectory, you having been on agency via acquisition, via multiple acquisitions. So you're on the brand side, you're on the agency side again, you're on the rights holder side. And now, seemingly, you have cobbled together enough wisdom, experience, and information to launch your own practice in leadership and coaching. And let's hear more about that, because that's one of those areas of functionality in the marketplace that I don't think is well understood at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can tell you, Carl, it was the scariest decision I've probably ever made, was to decide to pivot from an industry where I have all the relational equity, I had the institutional knowledge, I could do the work with my eyes closed. It was no question, But I was also at a point in my life where, and I think you can relate to this, Carl, from your journey, where I felt like I was sleepwalking, man. And I felt like there was more for me to do. And I really believe that the experiences and work I had in motorsports and agency brand the last 25 plus years was going to set me up for the next 25 to 30 in this new season or chapter. And that's when I decided, I said, I want to take having worked around these championship level drivers and teams, I want to take the strategies of continuous improvement, the ideas around mindset, the ways that we would approach challenges, the ways that we led from watching these incredible leaders in pressure laden situations. I want to take this to a corporate audience, to a leadership, level. I want to help these leaders and teams perform their best when it matters the most. That's what I want to do. And I don't know if it was just ignorance that I felt like I could just jump out and do this, if it was just, ridiculous courage, or a little bit of both. I don't know, but I decided it was time to go and do that. So I pivoted out in 2018 as a speaker, as a coach, a trainer, an author as well. To share these messages with different organizations. And since then, I've, look, man, the lights are still on, right? The camera's still going here.
Right.
And I've had the opportunity to work with brands like PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, the U.S. Army, U.S. Bank, AutoZone, Napa. NASCAR's had me in several times. Just incredible organizations that say, yeah, Mike, we believe in the message and what you're sharing with us and the way you share it with us and make it applicable, help keeping it relevant and entertaining is of value and benefit to our organizations and customers.
No, organizational dynamics are huge. And the larger the organization, the more siloed it becomes and the less human it becomes. And oftentimes, a third party consultant or an individual like you or an agency like yours can come in and use the term, humanize and practicalize attitudes, choices, behaviors, energy levels, do the things that are mission critical.
Yes.
And sort of don't worry about the stuff that might not be at the moment. There's going to be plenty of time for that when it's time for that. Right. So I applaud what you've done, what you are doing.
Thank you.
Tell us how people can find you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I'll tell you, it's an absolute joy to be able to do this work, with just amazing people, and even get to connect with people like yourself, my friend. So you can find me at MikeMooney.com, my website. LinkedIn, you can find me there as well. And
prolific on LinkedIn, by the way, everybody.
What's that?
I said you're prolific on LinkedIn.
Thank you, man. I'm working at it. It's just staying relevant in front of people, but it's a great platform. So yeah, I love connecting on LinkedIn. And listen, if you want to just connect and reach out, please feel free. My email is mike@mikemooney.com. Really simple.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, great stories, man. And congratulations on where you are. And
thank you.
I'd say good luck for the future, but luck doesn't have much to do with it, man. It's energy, it's experience, and it's being able to bring the goods at the right time in the right manner. So congratulations on all of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, buddy. I will receive that.
Okay. We've got a few minutes left, and I ask everybody the same 3 questions. So here you go. All right.
Let's go.
So this is your favorite mistake. It's an homage to Sheryl Crow. She's one of my faves, and she wrote and sang this song. So the favorite mistake is where you really messed up. You messed up. Your organization knows you messed up, but you recovered from it and what you learned from it.
Wow. Okay. I would say I've got so many to choose from, Carl.
Well, we all do. Just flag one for us.
I would say it was a personnel issue, and this was a little bit earlier in my leadership journey. I don't think I was quite a leader yet. I was still a manager, but leading people. And I had 2 people on my team that were not getting along well, and I had been reading some books that were saying, oh, well, just get them in the room and let them work it out. And I thought, okay, that sounds good. So I got them in the room and I said, look, I've been trying to help you and it's not working. Can't help you. So I'm going to leave for 30 minutes and you 2 work it out. When I come back, I want to make sure that this is resolved and we're moving forward. Naive. Yeah. So I walk out of the room and about 20 minutes later, someone comes running down the hall and goes, Mike, do you not hear what's going on? It's coming from your office. And I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. There are people, as I'm walking closer to my office, you just hear this god-awful screaming and yelling, things being thrown around. People are standing outside my office, and the owner of the company is looking at me going, what did you just unleash? And I'm like, I have no idea. And I realized the 2 of them in there are just literally like at fisticuffs. So it was a mistake in thinking that I could abdicate my leadership role in helping to navigate conflict, right? I went in and clearly everyone saw it. There was no hiding it, from that moment. And I kind of dispersed the group. I sat the 2 people down, said, okay, we got to take a break, but we need to revisit this. And we did. And I figured out, I brought in a mentor of mine to help me navigate how do I best do this and fix this. And we did. We got people back on the same page. But the next step that I asked to do was actually at a company-wide meeting, just discuss it and bring it up and say, look, this is what I did. And I thought it was the right thing. It wasn't. Here's what we did to make it better. The 2 people got up and they kind of said their piece about it. And, we really had an opportunity to learn as a company through that, not me walking through the halls with my head down or being embarrassed.
Right. So it was a learning moment as well as a teaching moment. And it went company-wide.
Yeah. And a lesson in vulnerability as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great outcome in a very challenging situation. We've all either been there or had it going on down the hall.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So the second question is, I'm a huge female singer songwriter, female led band. I love the female vocalists. So who is or was the best concert or recording artist, female, either singer songwriter or female led band in your lifetime?
Oh, wow. And that I saw or
Yeah,
that
or you
oh,
saw or you love or
yeah.
or she's on your bucket list to see.
No, well, yeah, I'll go with Anne and Nancy Wilson of Heart. Yeah, man, I had a band. I played drums, and I grew up on Long Island. One of the guitarists in my band in high school, his brother was the sound engineer for Hart and Billy Joel. So whenever they came to Madison Square Garden or Nassau Coliseum, we would always go. So I've got a picture of me like circa 1985 with a members only jacket, braces, hair, yeah, and with me and Ann and Nancy backstage. It was very cool.
No, I love them as well. And you're not the first to call out the Wilson sisters and Hart. And I say it every time somebody flags them. They did a performance, and I want to say it was Lincoln Center, of Stairway to Heaven. And Jimmy Page and Robert Plant are in the audience in the upper balcony, and they're crying. It's
Tearing up.
so good. It's so good. And it's on YouTube, so anybody who you got to track it down, watch it. It's amazing.
So it's so funny, man, because there are two videos that are my go-to on YouTube that I will just sit and watch over and over and over again. And that is one, that with Jason on the drums and the rest of the band up there watching, and Anne's just her voice. I mean, it's just, and the production of it, I mean, you just feel it. I mean,
Right.
amazing. I can
It's
watch it
amazing.
over and over. The other is Prince, his solo in While My Guitar Gently Weeps at George Harrison's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction.
Right.
That's a great one.
Wow. Okay. Now you got two, folks. Okay. The last question,
Yes.
and it's a meaningful one.
Okay.
As leaders, we all know that words really matter. What you say, what you don't say, how you say it. So the question for you, Mike, is your word and why?
Yeah, I'd say this is an easy one for me right now, and as I'm thinking of it, it really does tie a thread through my experience and my career, some of the stories I shared today. But that one word is intentionality, right? I just think that is so important and powerful for leaders to recognize that we have choices in, like you said, what we say and what we don't say, what we do, what we don't do, the choices we make in what I call these micro moments where we can be intentional can absolutely radically change the outcome of an experience that we have with others, and more importantly, that others have with us.
Awesome word. And the premise and the substance that goes with that word and all that it implies has real practical meaning in our lives, whether it's the workplace, whether it's family life, or whether you're out on the golf course or a tennis court. As a wannabe golfer, the last thing you want to do playing golf is lose your focus of that intentionality, right?
That's right.
Mike, this has been awesome. I can't thank you enough for being a guest on The Best Boss Ever. Thank you so much.
Carl, thank you. A great conversation with you, my friend. Thank you for the gift and opportunity to be with you on this awesome show. This is
My pleasure.